In the small Montana town of Redemption Creek, the beloved preacher who has baptized their children and blessed their marriages harbors a secret that would destroy everything. He was once Black Jack Morrison, the most feared gunslinger in the territories who killed 37 men before finding God. When his old gang rides into town seeking revenge and threatening to reveal his identity, he must choose between maintaining his peaceful facade or picking up his guns one last time to protect his congregation. But the greatest revelation isn't his bloody past. It's that his pregnant wife is the daughter of one of his victims, and she's known all along. This is a story where redemption meets revenge, where the pulpit meets the pistol, and where a man must decide if killing to protect the innocent can ever be holy. Hit that like button and subscribe to discover if a killer can truly become a saint. Reformed killer turned preacher must break his sacred vow. When past gang threatens town, the morning sun casts long shadows through the windows of Redemption Creek's small church as Reverend John Morrison prepared his Sunday sermon. His weathered hands, which had once been the fastest draw west of the Mississippi, now trembled slightly as they turned the pages of his worn Bible. 5 years he'd been here, 5 years of peace, 5 years of pretending the blood on his hands had been washed clean by baptismal waters. At 43, John looked every day of his hard-lived years. His black hair had gone gray at the temples, his face bore scars that his congregation politely never asked about, and his eyes held a weight that even God's grace couldn't fully lift. They called him Reverend Morrison, never knowing that the surname was stolen from his first victim, taken along with the man's clothes and horse after a gunfight in Tucson 15 years ago. Before that, he'd been Jake McKenna, and before finding God in a Mexican prison cell, he'd been Black Jack, killer of 37 men, leader of the devil's own gang, the nightmare that honest folk prayed would pass their towns by. "John," Mary's voice called from the parsonage next door. "Breakfast is ready." Mary Morrison, his wife of 3 years pregnant with their first child, the light that had convinced him God truly did forgive even the damned. She was 28 with auburn hair that caught fire in the sunlight and green eyes that saw right through him. The daughter of a school teacher from Kansas, she'd told him when they met. Another lie in the foundation of his new life, though he didn't know it yet. He found her in their small kitchen, one hand on her swollen belly, the other stirring eggs at the stove. The morning light through the window made her look like an angel, and John felt the familiar stab of unworthiness. "You're troubled," she said without turning around. She always knew. Sunday morning nerves. Today's sermon is about redemption. Your favorite topic. There was something in her voice, a weight that matched his own. "The only one I'm qualified to preach, a man who's been to hell can speak with authority about heaven." Mary turned to face him, and for a moment her mask slipped. He saw something in her eyes, knowledge, pain, purpose. Before she smiled, and it was gone. "Eat," she said. "The congregation expects strength from their shepherd." They ate in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from two people who understand that some truths are too heavy for words. Outside, the town was waking up. Redemption Creek had 800 souls, mostly families trying to scratch life from Montana's soil, decent people who deserve better than a fraud for a spiritual leader. The peace shattered with the thunder of hooves. John was at the window before his conscious mind registered, moving his hand, reaching for a gun that hadn't been there for 5 years. Old habits died hard. Some never died at all. 8 riders came down Main Street like a piece of his past torn loose and given form. He knew them before he saw their faces. The way they sat their horses, the casual menace in their bearing, the matched colts worn low and tied down. The Devil's Own had come to Redemption Creek. Leading them was Thomas Red Tom Baker, his lieutenant from the old days, now graying, but still rattlesnake mean. Beside him rode the Garrett brothers, Billy Chavez, Dutch Hoffman, and 3 younger men John didn't recognize. Fresh blood recruited after his departure. "Stay inside," John told Mary, his voice carrying an authority she'd never heard before. "John, please." He walked out onto Main Street, Bible in hand, wearing his preacher's collar like armor he knew wouldn't stop bullets. The riders had dismounted outside the saloon, but Red Tom saw him coming. The smile that spread across his weathered face was pure predator. "Well, well, boys, look what we found, the prodigal preacher himself." "Thomas," John kept his voice level, "it's been a long time. 5 years, 3 months, and 16 days since you left us, high and dry, in Yuma Jake. Or should I say Reverend Upperson now? The Garrett brothers snickered. They'd always been simple men who found violence amusing. That man is dead, John said. I'm not Black Jack McKenna, not the man who taught me everything about killing, not the one who shot Marcus Morrison in Tucson and took his name like a coyote taking a rabbit. Several townspeople had emerged from buildings drawn by the confrontation. John saw their confusion, their growing alarm. What do you want, Thomas? What's owed? You left with 20,000 in gold, our gold. The take from the Butterfield job. I left that gold in Mexico, used it to build an orphanage. Red Tom laughed harsh as a crow. An orphanage! Black Jack McKenna built an orphanage. Boys, ain't that just the finest joke you ever heard? It's the truth. Truth. Red Tom stepped closer, close enough that John could smell the whiskey and trail dust. You want to talk about truth, Reverend? How about we tell these fine folks the truth about their preacher? How many men you killed? How many towns you burned? How about we tell them about Kansas City? John went cold. Kansas City, a bank job gone wrong, a family caught in crossfire, a school teacher named Michael O'Brien who tried to be a hero who died trying to protect his daughter. That's enough, John said quietly. Or what, you'll sermonize us to death. You gave up your guns, Jake. Took up the Bible, and that makes you weak. I took up the Bible because I was weak, because I couldn't live with what I'd become. And yet here you are living just fine. Got yourself a pretty wife, I see. Red Tom's eyes found Mary watching from the parsonage window. Maybe we should introduce ourselves properly. Stay away from her. There he is. There's the old Black Jack hiding under all that religious polish. Still in there, isn't he? The killer. What do you want, Thomas? You didn't track me down just for money I don't have. Maybe I did. Or maybe I want what you took from us. Leadership. The gang's fallen apart without you, Jake. We need Black Jack back. He's dead. Is he? Let's test that. Red Tom drew his Colt in one smooth motion, not pointing it at John, but at Mrs. Henley, the banker's wife, who'd emerged from the general store. One dead townsperson, then another, until Black Jack comes back to save them, or until Reverend Morrison watches his flock get slaughtered. You've become a mad dog, Thomas. I've become what you made me. You taught me that power comes from fear, that mercy is weakness, that the only law is the gun. I was wrong. Were you then prove it? Face me, your Bible against my iron. Let's see which one God favors. Before John could respond, another voice cut through the tension. That's enough. Mary stood in the street, her father's Winchester rifle held steady despite her pregnant belly. But it wasn't the rifle that made John's blood freeze. It was the look in her eyes, the look of someone who'd been waiting for this moment. Mrs. Morrison, Red Tom tipped his hat mockingly, this doesn't concern you. Doesn't it? You're threatening my husband? My town? That concerns me greatly. Your husband. Do you even know who your husband really is? I know exactly who he is, Mary said, and something in her voice made everyone pause. He's Jake McKenna, Black Jack, killer of 37 men, including my father Michael O'Brien in Kansas City 6 years ago. The silence that followed was absolute. John felt the world tilt. Mary knew. Had always known. His legs nearly gave out as the implications crashed over him. Mary, he whispered. She didn't look at him, keeping her rifle trained on Red Tom. My name is Mary Catherine O'Brien. You killed my father when I was 22. I was there hiding behind the counter. I saw everything. Red Tom laughed delighted. Oh, this is rich. You married your father's killer. That's a kind of revenge I can respect. It wasn't revenge, Mary said quietly. It was justice. Justice, John found his voice. You've been, what? Playing me waiting for the right moment to what, kill you? Mary finally looked at him, and her eyes were full of tears. I came here 3 years ago to do exactly that. I tracked you down, learned your new name, your new life. I planned to make you love me, then destroy you. So our entire marriage was supposed to be a lie, but something happened I didn't expect. She placed her free hand on her belly. I fell in love with the man you'd become, the one who sits with dying miners and doesn't care if they can pay. who teaches children to read even though the town can't afford a real school, who has nightmares about every man he killed and prays for their souls every night. This is touching, read as Tom interrupted, but it doesn't change anything. Jake comes with us or this town burns. No, Mary said, he doesn't, and you're leaving. Now. Little girl, you're outnumbered 8-1. Am I? Windows opened all along Main Street. Rifles appeared, held by shopkeepers, farmers, miners. People John had ministered to, whose children he'd baptized, whose dead he'd buried. They knew the truth now, but they stood with him anyway. Old Sam Turner, the blacksmith, called out, Reverend Morrison might have been Black Jack once, but he's our preacher now. You want him, you go through us. And me, said Doc Holsworth. And me, added Mrs. Henley, the woman Red Tom had threatened. One by one, the townspeople declared themselves. They knew what John had been, and they chose who he was now. Red Tom's face darkened. You've gone soft, Jake, hiding behind women and shopkeepers. I've gone sane, John corrected. These people are under my protection. Your protection? You don't even carry a gun anymore. He doesn't, Mary said. But I do, and unlike John, I've never taken a vow of nonviolence. She shifted the rifle slightly, and Red Tom saw she had it aimed at his heart. Her hands were rock steady. Interesting, Red Tom mused, but 8 guns still beat one rifle and a bunch of farmers. 7 guns, Dutch Hoffman corrected, stepping away from the gang. I'm done, Tom. This ain't what I signed up for, threatening pregnant women and church folk. Dutch, you yellow sect. 6 guns, Billy Chavez added, moving to stand with Dutch. Jake saved my life in Amarillo. I ain't forgetting that. The Garrett brothers looked uncertain but held their positions. The 3 younger gunmen seemed ready to follow Red Tom's lead. Still 4-1 odds, Red Tom said, but his confidence was cracking. 3-1, a new voice called. A man rode into town from the north. Tall, lean, wearing a U.S. Marshal's badge. John recognized him immediately, Matthew Ford, whose brother John had killed in a fair fight 10 years ago. Marshal Ford, John said carefully. Reverend, got a wire about trouble heading this way. These men are wanted in 3 territories. This ain't federal business, Red Tom snarled. It is now. Ford dismounted, his hand resting on his peacemaker. Tom Baker, you're under arrest for murder robbery and enough other charges to hang you 3 times over. You and what army? The one standing behind you. Red Tom turned. A dozen cavalry soldiers had entered town from the south, rifles ready. Captain Hayes Fort Harrison, the officer leading them, announced. Marshal Ford requested assistance. Reverend Morrison, are you harmed? No, Captain. Red Tom looked around, calculating odds that were getting worse by the second. This ain't over, Jake. Yes, it is, John said quietly. It has to be. You think you can just wash the blood off? Become someone else, you're Black Jack McKenna. You'll always be Black Jack McKenna. Maybe, but I'm trying to be better. And if I don't let you, if I make you choose their lives or your principles, in one motion too fast for anyone to fully follow, Red Tom drew his Colt and aimed it at Mary. The gunshot echoed off the buildings. Red Tom looked down at his chest where blood was spreading. His gun hand was still raising the Colt, only halfway to target. John stood with his Bible in his left hand and Doc Holsworth's pistol smoking in his right, borrowed from the doctor's holster in a movement so smooth it seemed like magic. Still fast, Red Tom gasped, dropping to his knees. Still, Black Jack. No, John said, walking over to his former lieutenant. Black Jack would have killed you all. I just stopped you. Red Tom coughed blood. You think this changes anything? You're still a killer. Yes, but now I'm a killer who protects instead of destroys. Red Tom died with a laugh on his lips, falling forward into Montana dust. The other gang members surrendered without resistance. As the soldiers led them away, Marshal Ford approached John. That was a righteous shooting, Ford said, but I've got paper on Jake McKenna too. Old paper, but still valid. I know. Ford studied him for a long moment. Jake McKenna was reported dead in Mexico 5 years ago, killed in a prison riot. The Mexican authorities were very clear about that. John understood. They were very clear. In fact, I have the death certificate right here. Ford pulled out a paper, showed it to John, then deliberately tore it in half. Shame to lose important documents, but these things happen. Reverend Morrison, you have a good day. As Ford walked away, John felt Mary's hand slip into his. He looked down at her, this woman who'd come to kill him and chose to love him instead. You knew, he said, this whole time. Yes. Why didn't you kill you? I tried. That first night I stood over your bed with a knife. But you were having a nightmare calling out the names of men you'd killed, begging God to forgive you. I realized you were already in hell. Killing you would have been a mercy. So you married me instead. I wanted you to suffer, to love me, then lose me when I revealed the truth. But then I heard you preach about redemption, about how the worst sinners make the best saints because they know the true cost of grace. And I realized I wasn't just talking about you, I was talking about me too. I'd become consumed by revenge, turned into something my father wouldn't recognize. Your father was a good man. I remember. He tried to shield a child. He tried to shield me, died thinking he'd succeeded. I'm sorry, Mary, more sorry than words can. I know, I've seen your sorrow every day for 3 years. It's what made me love you, not who you were, but how much you regretted it. And the baby, Teo, Mary took his hand and placed it on her belly. It's yours, conceived in love, not revenge. My final choice to let Mary O'Brien die and become Mary Morrison. But can you really forgive me? Can you wake up every morning next to the man who killed your father? I already have been. The question is, can you forgive yourself? John looked at the blood on the street, at his congregation still watching, at the woman who'd chosen love over vengeance. I don't know. Then we'll work on it together. That's what marriage is, two broken people helping each other heal. The weeks following the confrontation were difficult. Some townspeople left Redemption Creek unable to reconcile their preacher with Blackjack McKenna. But more stayed and new people arrived, folks looking for second chances drawn by word of a town that believed in redemption. John offered to resign, but the church board voted to keep him. We've all got pasts, Sam Turner said at the meeting. Difference is you're trying to make up for yours. Mary's pregnancy progressed, and with it came a new understanding between them. They talked, really talked, for the first time. She told him about growing up without a father, about the anger that had consumed her, about tracking him through 5 states and 2 territories. I became a bounty hunter, she admitted one evening. Learned to shoot, to track, to kill if necessary, all to find you. And when you did, I watched you for months before approaching, saw you give your last dollar to a widow, saw you sit all night with a dying child, saw you refuse to fight when a drunk cowboy challenged you even when he spit in your face. I couldn't risk anyone discovering what I was. No, you couldn't risk becoming what you were. There's a difference. On a cold November night, Mary went into labor. It was long and difficult, and John paced the parsonage like a caged animal, while Doc Holsworth tended to her. The cries of pain from their bedroom were like accusations, reminders that he'd brought nothing but suffering to those around him. Stop it, Martha Henley said. She'd become Mary's closest friend, despite, or perhaps because of the truth. That's your child fighting to enter this world. New life, Reverend, not death. When the baby's cry finally came, strong and healthy, John fell to his knees and wept. Doc Holsworth emerged tired but smiling. Congratulations, Reverend. You have a son. John entered the bedroom to find Mary holding a small bundle, her face exhausted but radiant. Would you like to hold him? She asked. My hands have killed, yes, but they've also healed, blessed, comforted. Our son needs all of what you are, John, not just the parts you think are clean. He took the baby with infinite care, looking down at the tiny face. The child had Mary's nose and what might become his dark hair. What should we name him? Mary asked. Michael, John said without hesitation. After your father. Mary's eyes filled with tears. Michael Morrison. If that's all right, it's perfect. My father would have. He believed in redemption too. It's why he tried to stop you that day, not to be a hero, but because he thought anyone could be saved. He was right. He was. It just took longer than he had. They christened Michael Morrison Jr. the following Sunday. The church was packed, including some unexpected guests. Dutch Hoffman and Billy Chavez had returned not as outlaws, but as men seeking their own redemption. If Black Jack can become a preacher, Dutch said, maybe there's hope for us too. John put them to work. Dutch at the blacksmith's, Billy, helping to build a new schoolhouse. They weren't the only ones. Word had spread about Redemption Creek, the town where your past didn't define your future. Former outlaws, prostitutes seeking new lives, soldiers haunted by things done in war, they all came seeking what John had found. "We're building a town of sinners," Mary observed one day while watching a former saloon girl teach Sunday school. "Aren't all towns full of sinners? We're just more honest about it." Marshall Ford visited regularly, sometimes bringing others who were running from their pasts, but towards something better. He and John developed an understanding. Ford would give folks a chance if John vouched for them. "You're collecting broken people," Ford observed. "Christ collected broken people. I'm just following his example. And if one of them breaks bad, returns to their old ways, then I'll stop them. With violence," John considered, "if necessary. I've learned something these past months. Complete pacifism in the face of evil is just another form of selfishness. Sometimes protecting the innocent requires action." That's a dangerous philosophy for a former killer. Everything's dangerous for a former killer. The key is choosing which dangers are worth facing. 1 year after the confrontation with the Red Tom, another ghost from John's past arrived. But this one didn't come with guns. Sister Catherine ran the orphanage in Mexico that John had built with the stolen gold. She was 70, weathered by sun and service, and she looked at John with eyes that had seen everything. "Father Juan," she said, using the name he'd gone by there, "I've come to show you something." She'd brought a book, photographs, and letters from the orphanage. 23 children will live there now, orphans of violence given a chance at life. "This is Roberto," she said, showing a picture of a boy about 10. "His father was killed in a gunfight. By you, actually. In Sonora." John's hands trembled. "I remember." "Roberto wants to be a priest. Says he wants to help people find God, like the man who built his home did. He doesn't know." "Oh, he knows. They all know. We don't lie to them, but we teach them that people can change, that sin isn't stronger than grace." She stayed for a week, long enough to see John's work in Redemption Creek, to meet the congregation of former sinners, to hold baby Michael. "You've done well, Father Juan," she said before leaving. "The gold you stole has saved more lives than you took." "That doesn't balance the scales." "No, but it tips them in the right direction." As Michael grew, John told him stories, carefully edited at first, then more honest as the boy got older. By the time Michael was 5, he knew his father had been a bad man who became good, though the full details would wait. "Will I be bad too?" Michael asked one night. "No," Mary said firmly. "You'll be whoever you choose to be." "I want to be like Papa." "Like I am now or like I was?" John asked. Michael considered with 5-year-old seriousness. "Both. The bad part, so you understand bad people. The good part, so you can help them." Out of the mouths of babes, John thought. The town grew. The church expanded. John's reputation spread, not as Black Jack, but as the preacher who understood sin because he'd lived it. Men on the run sought him out, not for sanctuary, but for transformation. He still carried no gun, but everyone knew he could. The knowledge was its own deterrent. When trouble came to Redemption Creek, and it occasionally did, John would stand in the street, Bible in hand, and give men a choice: redemption or judgment. Most chose redemption. Those who didn't discovered that his mercy had limits, and his aim remained true. 10 years after Red Tom's death, John stood in the cemetery placing flowers on a new grave. Mary had died the previous winter, pneumonia taking her despite Doc Holsworth's best efforts. She'd faced death as she'd faced life, with clear eyes and fearless heart. "I forgive you," were her last words, completely. Michael, now 14 and tall like his father, stood beside him. "Do you miss her?" the boy asked. "Every moment." "Do you regret it?" "Your past, I mean. If you hadn't been Black Jack, she wouldn't have come looking for you." John considered. "I regret the pain I caused, the lives I took. But that path led me to your mother, to you, to this town full of second chances. God works in mysterious ways." Marshall Ford says you are the fastest gun he ever saw. Speed with a gun is nothing to be proud of, son. But you still practice. I've seen you in the barn at dawn. John sighed. "Evil doesn't rest. If I must defend the innocent, I want to be capable. But I pray every day to never need that skill again. And if you do need it, then I'll use it, and pray for forgiveness after." They walked back toward town, where the evening service would soon begin. Redemption Creek spread before them, larger, now prosperous, filled with people who'd chosen to change. Michael said, I want to be a preacher, like you. Not a gunfighter. You're not a gunfighter. You're a preacher who can shoot. There's a difference, Yershishi. Is there? Yes, a gunfighter shoots because he can. A preacher who can shoot does so because he must, and only then. Wisdom from his son, inherited perhaps from his mother. That Sunday, John preached about transformation as he often did. But this time, he told his whole story complete and unedited. The congregation, filled with former outlaws, reformed prostitutes, recovering drunks, and ordinary folks with their own hidden sins, listened without judgment. I was Blackjack McKenna, he concluded. I killed 37 men. I cannot undo that. But with God's grace and your acceptance, I've tried to save twice that many. Not to balance the scales, that's impossible, but to prove that change is possible, that the worst of us can become, if not the best, then at least better. Amen. Or the congregation responded and meant it. After the service, a young man approached, nervous, armed with the look of someone running from trouble. Are you really Black Jack? He asked. I was. I've killed 3 men. Self-defense, they say, but I could have walked away. Can someone like me really change? John looked at the young man and saw himself 20 years ago. Lost violence, searching for a way out of the darkness. Sit, John said. Let me tell you about redemption. Real redemption. It starts with acknowledgement and ends with action, with a lifetime of choosing to be better than you were. As he talked, Michael helped Martha serve coffee, the congregation mingled, and somewhere John hoped Michael O'Brien and the 37 others were at peace, knowing their deaths had led, however indirectly, to life. The preacher's bloody past would always be there, shadowing his present. But in Redemption Creek, shadows were just places where light hadn't reached yet. And John Morrison, who had been Blackjack McKenna, would spend whatever years remained bringing light to those shadows, one soul at a time.